Why didn't you ever tell me? Why'd you hide this from me all this time? And now Mom's gone. I can't even talk to her. My voice cracked as I shouted, each word scraping my throat raw. I stared at Dad, daring him to meet my eyes. He just sat there in the driver's seat, his grip on the steering wheel so tight his knuckles glowed white. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. He just sat, frozen, like he was waiting for the courage to speak or for the right words to arrive. The car was parked on some empty street, the kind where the houses all looked the same and there was no one around, no one to see me falling apart. The engine hummed quietly, a mechanical heartbeat filling up the silence, thick and heavy, almost suffocating. My chest felt squeezed, every breath a struggle. I tried to hold on to the words he'd just given me, but they slipped through my fingers, impossible to grasp, leaving me with nothing but questions and a hollow ache in my stomach. It was like the ground itself had tilted, and I was left scrambling for footing. My name is Hannah, 18 years old, supposedly an adult now, whatever that means. Today was supposed to be a good day, the kind you remember for the rest of your life, something worth looking forward to. Maybe a celebration, or at least a chance to start over. Instead, I was sitting here, trapped in a car with my father, picking at wounds and secrets I hadn't even known existed. This road trip from Seattle to San Francisco was supposed to be about adventure, about connecting, about moving forward. At first, it felt like that, a chance to escape the heaviness that had settled over us since Mom died. The miles blurred by, and for a little while it was just the two of us against the world. But now, as we sat in front of a house I'd never even seen before, everything felt wrong, twisted, as if I'd stepped into someone else's story. When Dad first suggested the trip, I'd been surprised, almost suspicious. After Mom died, he'd done his best to keep things together, but it always felt awkward, as if he was following a script he didn't really understand. Dinners were forced, conversations stilted and shallow, his attempts at encouragement landing flat. We'd lived in the same house but felt like strangers, orbiting each other carefully, afraid to collide. But this road trip was different. When he handed me the map and the keys that morning, his eyes were tired but hopeful, the kind of hope that made me want to believe too. It was so out of character that for a second I almost said no, but I saw something in him, something desperate and unfinished, and I couldn't turn away from that. The first hours on the road were almost easy. Windows down, music blaring, Dad talking about bands he used to love and places he wanted to see. We laughed, made silly bets about who'd spot the most weird road signs, and even talked about Mom. He brought her up more than he had in months. Hearing her name hurt, but it also made me feel less alone, like she was still riding along with us, tucked away somewhere in the back seat. I wanted to hold on to that version of us, to freeze time before everything shifted. But as the highway stretched on and the sun dipped lower, the mood started to change. Dad grew quieter, his hands fidgeting on the wheel. He started apologizing for things, small and big. Missed birthdays, the way he'd handled things after Mom died, even the times he'd lost his temper. At first I thought it was just the grief catching up with him, the kind of regret that sneaks in when the world gets quiet. But the closer we got to San Francisco, the more I felt like something else was coming, like there was a storm gathering just over the horizon, and he was the only one who could see it. We spent our first night at a rundown roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon and a parking lot full of potholes. The bed was hard, the heater made weird noises, and outside, a vending machine buzzed like an angry bee. We ate dinner at a greasy diner down the street, under lights that made everything look a little too bright, a little unreal. Dad tried to make conversation, asked about my classes, my friends, what I wanted for my birthday, but his words felt forced, his eyes always drifting away, like he was seeing something only he could understand. He looked older than I remembered, worn down at the edges. "You okay, Dad?" I finally asked, watching him push peas around his plate. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Yeah," he said, but his voice sounded hollow, empty. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just tired. Long day." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. The more I watched him, the more I realized this trip wasn't about my birthday at all. It was about something else, something he was carrying that he couldn't put down. On the walk back to the motel, the night air was cool and sharp. Dad kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to ask the right question or maybe just for the nerve to say what he needed to say. I wanted to ask, but I was scared too. Scared of what the answer might be. Back in the room, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the heater's low drone, and tried to make sense of the distance between us. It felt wider than ever. Eventually, the silence became too much. "Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me?" He stopped with his back to me, jacket still in his hands, and let out a long, tired sigh. "It's not the right time, Hannah." He shook his head, almost to himself. "We'll talk when we get to San Francisco." When he turned around, his face was shadowed, the fear in his eyes clear as day. "Why not now?" I pressed, feeling the frustration rise in my chest. "We're here. Just us. If there's something you need to say, just say it." He rubbed his face, sinking into the battered chair by the window. "It's complicated," he said, and his voice sounded older, smaller. "I've made mistakes, Hannah. Big mistakes. Things I regret every single day. Things I can't fix, no matter how much I want to." He looked up, and I saw tears shining in his eyes, grief and guilt tangled together. "Your mom always knew how to make things better. She could fix anything. I never could. And when she was gone, I didn't know how to be enough for you." My heart ached at how lost he looked. "Dad, I know things have been hard. But you tried. I saw it. Why are you so hard on yourself?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Trying isn't always enough. Not after everything that happened. I wish I could go back and do it all over, do it right. I was so wrapped up in my own pain, my own mistakes. I forgot you were hurting too." He stared down at his hands, turning them over as if looking for answers in the lines of his palms. "I don't want you to think I didn't love you, Hannah. I did. Your mom and I both did. But there were days when I didn't know how to show it, and I'm sorry for that." I sat quietly, overwhelmed by how vulnerable he sounded. For the first time, I saw past his anger and silence, saw the father who was just as lost and scared as I was. "Dad," I whispered, "I don't know what to say." He managed a shaky smile, the kind that makes you want to believe things can still get better. "You don't have to say anything, kiddo. Just know that everything I'm doing now, everything I'm going to tell you, is because I want to make things right. I can't change the past, but I want to try if you'll let me." That night, as Dad drifted off to sleep, his breathing finally even and calm, I lay awake listening to the noises of the motel room, the hum of the heater, the distant sound of a car passing by. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, waiting for morning and whatever truths it might bring. I didn't know what Dad was going to say when we reached San Francisco, but for the first time I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. Yet I knew I needed to, because sometimes the only way forward is through the secrets we're most afraid to face. I lay awake, staring up at the cracked ceiling of the motel room, tracing jagged lines with my eyes in the dim glow from the parking lot lights. Sleep stayed just out of reach, as it always did when my mind started wandering back in time. Funny, I thought, how the oldest wounds keep aching no matter how many birthdays you stack between then and now. I could almost hear my father's voice echoing in the silence, sharp and distant, never quite angry enough to call cruel, but never soft enough to call loving. He was always there, but never really present, like I was a riddle he'd given up solving, the answer always slipping out of his grasp. I remembered the times he'd bark at me for the smallest slip, a glass of milk knocked over, socks left on the stairs, a test marked with something less than an A. The way his words cut, not in their volume but their precision, always left me shrinking into myself, wondering what invisible rule I'd broken this time. Even when my mom tried to patch things up, her gentle voice threading through the tension, it didn't take much for their disagreements to catch fire, filling the house with thunder. His frustration became a cloud that settled over me, thick and suffocating, making me feel like I was always one misstep away from disappointment. When I tried to sift through the years for something warm to hold on to, the good memories with him showed up only as faint glimmers, Little moments I couldn't quite grasp, gone before I could be sure they were real. My mother, though, she was the one constant, the anchor in all that churning water. She told me I was enough, her love wrapping around me with no terms or conditions, no matter what I did or failed to do. Without her, I felt like a boat cut loose in a storm, drifting with no idea which way was home. My mom was everything my dad couldn't be. She brought color to the gray. Her laughter was loud and full, echoing through the house like sunlight on the walls. When I messed up, she never scolded. Instead, she'd sit next to me, talk softly, helping me untangle whatever knot I'd found myself in. She made even the most ordinary days seem like they mattered, like I mattered. Her hugs made the world quiet, and I'd give anything to feel that kind of warmth again. Losing her was like someone switched off the sun. The house grew colder, the shadows longer, and nothing since had filled that space. Even now, thinking about her calmed the storm inside me. Her memory a quiet lull that finally let me drift off to sleep. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my dad rustling by the window, his face half lit by the watery morning sun. I watched him for a moment, shoulders hunched, eyes lost somewhere out in the parking lot. He looked older than I remembered, deeper lines etched into his skin, a heaviness in the way he moved. When he saw me stirring, he pulled himself together, turning with a smile that looked like it hurt to wear. "Morning, birthday girl," he said, his voice straining for something brighter. 18. That's a big one, huh? I sat up, stretching, trying to match his energy. Yeah. Doesn't feel all that different so far. He chuckled, a brittle sound that faded almost as soon as it began. Maybe this will help, he said, getting up and reaching into his bag. He held out a small envelope, its edges soft and worn, as if it had traveled a long way to get here. As he pressed it into my hand, his fingers lingered, and I felt a tremor pass between us. "Your gift," he said, his tone lighter than his eyes. "It's important." I turned the envelope over, feeling its weight. "What is it?" I asked, searching his face for clues. He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't come. "I want you to wait," he said finally, his voice lower, almost pleading. "Don't open it yet. Keep it sealed until we get to San Francisco. Promise me, Hannah." Something tightened in my chest, but I nodded, sliding the envelope into my bag like it was something fragile. "Okay. I promise." He exhaled, shoulders dropping a fraction. "Good," he said, forcing a little brightness back into his voice. "Let's go get some breakfast. My treat, birthday style." But as we packed up and checked out, I could see the strain in him, the careful way he carried himself, as if whatever was in that envelope weighed more than paper ever could. I sensed that this wasn't just a birthday present. It was something bigger, something that scared him. We found a small diner down the road, the kind with scratched vinyl booths and the lingering smell of coffee and syrup. Dad ordered pancakes for me, the stack nearly toppling under a mountain of whipped cream, a single candle flickering crookedly in the middle. "Can't have a birthday without cake," he said, his smile trembling like he was holding something back. I matched his smile, doing my best to keep things light, but I could feel the envelope in my bag like a second heartbeat, insistent and heavy. We ate in silence, both of us picking at the edges of our food, conversation slipping away after a few awkward attempts. The drive that day felt longer than all the miles we'd covered so far. Outside, the landscape blurred past the window, but inside the car, time seemed to stretch out, thick with things neither of us could say. Dad tried to fill the space with distractions, pointing out odd roadside attractions, flipping through radio stations until he found a song we both knew, making half-hearted jokes about the world's biggest ball of yarn. But the effort was obvious, the laughter forced. Every so often I'd catch him staring at me, jaw clenched, eyes flickering with some unspoken worry. I wondered if he was remembering years of silence between us, or if he was just as lost as I was. As we neared San Francisco, the sense of something looming only grew stronger. The city came into view in the late afternoon, its skyline sharp and unfamiliar against the streaks of sunset. Dad fell quiet, gripping the steering wheel as we crossed the bridge. His usual running commentary replaced by tense silence. I watched him, noticing the way his knuckles whitened and his eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. "We're almost there," he said, finally breaking the silence, but his voice was far away. "We'll check into the hotel first." When we pulled into the parking lot of a modest hotel on the city's edge, he sat in the car for a long moment, staring at nothing. I watched him, heart pounding, knowing something was about to change. "You okay, Dad?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded too quickly, not meeting my eyes. "Just tired," he muttered, but the way he hurried out of the car told me he was running from more than exhaustion. He grabbed his bag and disappeared inside, leaving me to follow, my mind racing with questions I didn't know how to ask. In the hotel room, Dad dropped his bag by the door and glanced at his watch, restless. "Go ahead and settle in," he said, trying for casual, but his voice wavered. "There's a place I want to show you tonight." I looked at him, curiosity and anxiety swirling together. "What kind of place?" He smiled, a sad, small thing, and turned away, avoiding my eyes. The room filled with the quiet hum of the city outside, and I knew in that moment that whatever he was about to reveal would change everything I thought I knew about him, about us, and maybe even about the woman whose memory I clung to on nights I couldn't sleep. "Just somewhere special. Trust me, you'll like it." His voice was calm, measured, but I could pick up the nervous tremor beneath the surface, a tension that made me wonder what he was really thinking. Still, I wanted to believe he had good intentions. Maybe this was his way of making up for the strangeness of the day, trying to celebrate my birthday in his own awkward way. "Okay," I said, trying to sound casual, even as my heart thudded a little faster. "Let me freshen up first." In the bathroom, as I splashed cold water on my face, I caught my reflection and wondered what he might have planned. Maybe he'd found a cozy restaurant, somewhere with dim lights and soft music, or tracked down one of those secret little places my mom used to talk about, where the food was homey and the staff remembered your name. The thought warmed me just for a moment. I let myself imagine a night where things actually went right, where I could tuck away a good memory to take out later, proof that not everything had to hurt. When I was ready, we stepped out into the city. Evening had settled, painting the sky in bruised purple and gold, and the streets were alive. Neon signs blinking on, car horns bleating, snippets of laughter drifting from crowded sidewalks and open windows. My dad was silent behind the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, lips pressed into a thin line. He maneuvered through the traffic with a kind of grim determination, taking turns down streets I didn't recognize, the familiar quickly giving way to the unknown. "So," I said, forcing a little brightness into my voice, "are you ever going to tell me where we're going, or is the suspense all part of the plan?" He glanced over, the ghost of a smile flickering across his face, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's a surprise," he said, softer this time, almost gentle. "Just relax. Enjoy the ride, okay?" I leaned my head against the window and watched the city whirl past in a blur of lights and shadows. For a few blocks I let myself hope. Maybe this was his attempt at something special, a gesture to show he remembered what today meant, or maybe he was taking me somewhere connected to Mom, a place where we could both remember her together. But the farther we drove, the more my optimism faded. The neighborhoods changed. The bright storefronts gave way to shuttered shops, the sidewalks cracked and empty, the streetlights flickering or dark. The sense of excitement twisted, turning in my stomach into a knot of unease. Eventually, we turned onto a narrow, dimly lit street lined with old houses, their paint peeling and porches sagging under the weight of years. My dad slowed the car, peering at the faded numbers on battered mailboxes, searching for something. "Here we are," he murmured, more to himself than to me, and pulled up in front of a house that looked like it had weathered too many storms. The engine shut off. In the sudden quiet, the world outside seemed far away, muffled by the heavy silence between us. I looked around, frowning. "This is it," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, edged with disappointment and confusion. "What are we doing here?" I'd pictured laughter and candles, maybe a place where I could feel my mom's presence, not this forgotten corner of the city. He didn't respond right away. He just stared at the house, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, the lines of his face deepening in the half-light. Finally he spoke, his voice trembling at the edges. "I need to tell you something, Hannah," he said, almost in a whisper. "And it's not easy." Chill ran through me. "What is it, Dad?" I asked, my own voice small. "You're scaring me." He exhaled shakily, then released his grip on the wheel as if it required all the strength he had. "Hannah," he began, his words slow and halting, "there's something I've been carrying for a long time. Something I should have told you years ago. After your mom died, I thought about it 100 times, sometimes I even started to say it out loud. But every time I stopped myself. I convinced myself it wasn't the right time, or that telling you would only make things worse. Honestly, I was afraid. Afraid of how you'd see me. Afraid it would break something between us that I could never fix." I sat perfectly still, every muscle tight, watching him search for the right words. He went on, and I could hear the pain in his voice, old and raw. "I know you've wondered why I wasn't the father you needed. Why I kept my distance when you were little. Why I always seemed angry or disappointed, even when you tried so hard. The truth is, I hated myself for it. I hated the way I acted around you because none of it was your fault. Not a single bit of it." He paused, and for a long moment the only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine. Then he spoke again, his voice thick with regret. "When your mom and I got married, we dreamed about having a family. She talked about it all the time, made lists of baby names, imagined family trips and holidays filled with laughter. But it didn't happen, not the way we hoped. I found out I couldn't be the one to give her that. I couldn't give her the child she wanted so badly. And that broke something inside me. I felt small, less than a man, like I'd failed at the most important thing. Instead of letting her comfort me, I shut her out. I was angry, bitter, and I let that poison everything between us." He glanced at me then, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "But your mom, she was stronger than I ever was. She didn't let my anger change her. She believed family was more than blood, that love could build something real, even if it didn't start the way we planned. She convinced me, after many fights and long nights, that adoption was just as meaningful. And she was right, Hannah. She was always right. But back then I was blind to it, too wrapped up in my own shame to see the gift we'd been given." He looked down at his hands, turning them over as if searching for answers in the lines and scars. "The day we brought you home, I wanted to be the father you deserved. I wanted to make your mom proud, to make myself proud. But every time I looked at you, all I saw was what I couldn't give her. All I saw was my own sense of failure. Instead of facing my pain, I let it come between us. I kept you at arm's length, thinking maybe that would protect you from my disappointment, protect you from me. But all it did was hurt you. And I can never forgive myself for that." Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and silent. I didn't speak. I knew he needed to finish. "When your mom died, everything in my world shifted. Losing her was like losing the sun. The warmth, the hope, the person who always believed in us, even when we didn't believe in ourselves. I realized, too late, how much I'd failed you, how many precious years I'd wasted being the father you didn't deserve. That's why I've been trying, Hannah. Trying to be better, to make it up to you, even though I know I can never truly make it right. I missed so many moments. I missed the chance to be the dad you needed when you were small. I can't change that now. But I want you to know the truth. I want you to know how deeply sorry I am, and how much I love you, even if I was too broken to show it before." He wiped his eyes, voice hoarse with emotion. "Standing here, looking at this old house, I remember how much your mom believed in new beginnings. She saw hope where I saw failure. She wanted us to be a family no matter what it took. I want to honor that now. I want to let go of the past, if you can forgive me, even a little. I just want to try, Hannah. I want us to heal together." The weight of his confession hung in the air, heavy and fragile. My heart hurt for the years lost, for the pain that shaped both of us. But beneath it all, there was a thread of hope, a chance to start again if we were both brave enough to take it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, tremors running up my arms like I'd just stepped out into a blizzard without a coat. For years, I'd wondered what the truth was that Mom and Dad kept hinting at, always with those careful glances, those unfinished sentences. Now I was 18. Supposedly old enough for honesty, for answers, for everything they'd locked away. That's what they always said anyway. But after Mom died, Dad just seemed lost, like the words he needed were locked somewhere deep and he didn't know how to find the key. I'd watched him struggle so many times, saw it in the way his eyes shifted, the way he'd clench his jaw when I asked about the past. Regret lived in his gaze, but there was something else too, something like relief, as if finally breaking the silence might free him from a weight he'd carried alone. He gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring him, his knuckles white, his breath coming in slow, measured bursts. The car was parked in front of a house I'd never seen before, but all I could focus on was Dad's hands, trembling, betraying everything he tried to hide. "Hannah, you're adopted," he said. His voice so quiet I almost missed it, like he was afraid saying it too loud would shatter the world. "We adopted you when you were a baby. Your mom and I. We wanted to tell you, but we kept waiting for the right moment. And well, I guess this is it." I stared at him, the word adopted ricocheting through my mind, echoing off the walls of everything I'd ever known. It was like the ground had shifted beneath me, like my entire life was a puzzle and someone had just knocked the pieces off the table. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out, just silence, thick and choking. Dad's hands were still shaking, gripping the wheel harder, and the silence between us stretched until it felt unbearable. He spoke again, even softer now, his voice raw. "I know it's a lot, Hannah. I know it's not fair, springing this on you now, after everything. But I couldn't keep it from you anymore. You deserve to know." The car felt impossibly small, the air so heavy it pressed in on me from all sides. I stared out the window at the house, paint flaking from the siding, grass growing wild and untamed. It was like I was seeing everything through water, edges blurring, colors dull. My eyes burned, and I forced myself to swallow the sob building in my chest. "Why?" The word came out jagged, barely more than a whisper. "Why did you wait so long? Mom's gone, and now I can't even ask her. I can't hear her side, can't understand any of it." My voice broke, and I wrapped my arms around myself, as if I could hold my insides together. Dad's shoulders slumped, his head bowing like my question had physically weighed him down. "Your mom wanted to tell you sooner," he admitted, voice thick with old pain. "She thought you deserved to know when you were little, when you could grow up understanding it." I was scared, Hannah. I was scared of how you'd feel, scared I'd lose you. After she died, I just didn't know how to do it by myself. I let my fear decide for me. Anger and grief twisted inside me, tangled and sharp. "And this house? Why are we here?" I demanded, my words trembling with all the feelings I couldn't name. Dad stared at the dashboard, his jaw working as he struggled to find the words. "This is where your biological mother lives," he finally said. "We thought maybe you'd want to know. At least have the choice. To see where you came from. Who she is. But it's up to you. I won't force you. I'll support whatever you decide." Before I could process the enormity of his words, he nodded to the glove compartment. "There's something in there for you. An envelope. Get it. Envelope." I'd glimpsed it this morning but had no idea what it held. Now it felt like it pulsed with a secret too big for its thin paper walls. My hands trembled as I reached across and pulled it out, the weight of it pressing into my palm. "Open it," Dad urged, his voice steadier but laced with tension, as if he'd been rehearsing this moment for years. I slid my finger under the seal and unfolded the paper inside. My heart hammered, each beat echoing in my ears. My breath caught as I realized what I was holding. My original birth certificate. I stared at the name under Mother. Not Mom's, not the woman who had sung me to sleep and kissed my scraped knees, but a stranger's, written in bold, unfamiliar ink. The letters blurred as tears welled in my eyes. What is this?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. Dad finally turned to me, and for the first time I saw just how broken he was. Guilt and sorrow etched deep lines into his face, making him look older than I'd ever realized. "It's the truth, Hannah. It's where your story began. Before we brought you home. Before we became a family." I traced the unfamiliar name with my finger, trying to connect it to some part of myself, but it felt distant, unreal. Like looking at a photograph of someone else and being told it was me. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why did you and Mom keep this from me?" The question tumbled out, thick with accusation and longing. He exhaled a long, jagged breath, his hands falling from the wheel to his lap, defeated. "We thought we were protecting you. We convinced ourselves waiting was best, that you'd understand when you were older. But time slipped by, faster than we ever imagined. Then your mom was gone and I was left with this truth, and it got harder to say. I was afraid you'd hate me, that you'd think I wasn't really your father." The pain in his voice cracked something inside me. I looked back at the house, at the windows with their faded curtains. As I watched, a shadow flickered behind the glass. Someone moving, maybe watching us back. My stomach twisted. I gripped the birth certificate tighter, as if it could keep me tethered while everything else spun out of control. "Is that?" My voice trailed off, barely audible. Dad nodded, his gaze fixed on the house. "That's her. Your biological mother." The words hung between us, heavy and electric. I stared at the house, my mind reeling with questions. What kind of person was she? Did she think of me? Did she wonder what kind of life I'd had? Did she love me even from a distance? Or was I just a chapter she'd closed long ago? The curtain shifted again, and this time the figure lingered, a silhouette framed by warm lamplight, waiting, maybe hoping, maybe dreading. My chest ached with 1,000 feelings all at once. Curiosity sharp as a knife, fear cold as ice, anger simmering beneath it all. I didn't know if I wanted to run inside or run away. "What do I do?" I whispered, the question barely more than a breath, meant as much for me as for Dad. He was silent for a while, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Finally he reached over, resting a trembling hand on mine. "Whatever you need, Hannah," he said quietly. "Whatever you decide, you're not alone. I'm here. No matter what you find or what you choose, I'm still your dad. You're still my daughter. Nothing can ever change that." And as I sat there, birth certificate in hand, shadows shifting in the window, the future felt like a blank page, terrifying and full of possibility, waiting for me to write the next line. He just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, his expression giving nothing away. For a long moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the engine. Finally he spoke. "It's your choice, Hannah," he said, voice steady and almost tender. "I brought you here because you have a right to know the truth. But whether or not you want to meet her, that's something only you can decide. No matter what you choose, I'll be right here." Now, I'm sitting in this car with my heart pounding and my mind spinning in a million different directions. Everything I thought I understood about myself, about my family, suddenly feels uncertain, like the ground beneath me has shifted. My dad's words keep echoing in my mind. "It's your choice." It sounds so simple, but the truth is, I don't even know where to begin with a decision like this. On one hand, meeting her, my biological mother, could finally give me answers to questions that have lived quietly in the back of my mind for as long as I can remember. Who is she as a person? What circumstances made her give me up? Was it a difficult choice for her, or was it easy? Does she ever think about me, wonder what kind of person I've become, hope for the chance to meet me someday? There's a part of me that feels an ache, a curiosity, maybe even a longing to know where I come from. I wonder if I'll see something of myself in her eyes or hear echoes of my own laugh in hers. Maybe, just maybe, learning her story will help me understand mine a little better. I keep thinking that if I don't take this chance, I might regret it for the rest of my life, always wondering what could have been. But then fear creeps in. What if it's all too much for me to handle? What if seeing her opens up wounds I didn't even know I had? My life isn't perfect, but it's real and it's mine. I have a mom who has loved and cared for me every day of my life, and a dad who, even with all his flaws and mistakes, is finally trying to be present in the way I always needed. I'm terrified that meeting her might disrupt all of that, stir up feelings that could hurt the people who have always been there for me. And what if she doesn't want to meet me? The thought of being rejected all over again is almost unbearable. Or what if it happens and nothing changes at all? No epiphany, no closure, just an awkward conversation that leaves us both emptier than before. These thoughts swirl around in my head, making the decision feel massive and paralyzing. I keep asking myself, am I really ready to face whatever comes next? Am I strong enough to handle the answers, whatever they might be? Or is it better to just keep moving forward with the life I know, the people who love me, and let the past stay where it is? That's why I'm reaching out to you. If you were in my place, sitting in this car with your whole world hanging in the balance, would you get out, walk up to that door, and risk everything for the answers you might find? Or would you stay in the safety of what you already have, accepting that some questions might never be answered? I honestly don't know what the right choice is, and I could really use your perspective. Have you ever faced a decision like this? How did you handle it? What would you do if you were me? Please let me know what you think in the comments. Your advice could make all the difference right now. And if you found this story moving or it made you think, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It really helps us out, and you'll be the first to know when we share more stories like this one. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you being here more than you know. See you next time.